The University of Oxford has announced its decision to use UAT UK admissions tests for the application processes of a wide variety of courses that it teaches. This also meant the cancellation of 8 unique admissions tests that were exclusively used at Oxford. In this video, we're going to explore the announcement and learn how applicants will be impacted by this decision. Let's get straight into it. So, what's going on? In January of 2026, the University of Oxford officially announced its move to use a selection of pre-existing admissions tests from UAT UK via Pearson VUE as replacements for its former selection of exclusive in-house admissions tests. These tests were previously run by Oxford itself before it handed operational duties to Pearson VUE in 2025. However, the 8 admissions tests will no longer be used. These include the Mathematics Admissions Test, Physics Admissions Test, Biomedical Sciences Admissions Test, and Thinking Skills Assessment. The replacement for these admissions tests will be the pre-existing UAT UK admissions tests, the Engineering and Science Admissions Test, the Test of Mathematics for University Admissions, and the Test of Academic Reasoning for Admissions. These tests will be adopted by over 15 courses at the university in 2026, including Biomedical Sciences, Computer Science, Economics and Management, Engineering Science, Mathematics, Physics, PPE, and PPL, along with variants of these courses. These tests will have the same format and requirements as they do for other universities that use them, including Cambridge, Imperial, UCL, and LSE. Just like Cambridge, Oxford applicants will only be able to complete these admissions tests during the October sitting. The UCAT and LNAT are still in place at Oxford, so there's no change for medicine and law applicants. This change is generally a positive thing, as far more applicants will now have to complete just one admissions test during their application. Previously, if an applicant wanted to apply to Maths at Oxford and Imperial, as an example, they would have to complete both the TMUA and MAT, but courses like Maths, Engineering and Physics are now unified under a single test across all G5 universities. This isn't the case for every subject, unfortunately, as Computer Science and Economics at Oxford both use a different admissions test from some other G5 universities. For Computer Science, Oxford requires the TMUA, which matches Imperial, but not UCL, which requires the TARA. Economics and Management at Oxford requires the TARA, while UCL, LSE and Imperial all require the TMUA. So any applicants looking to apply to both Oxford and one of these other universities will need to take both. As well as this, another downside for Oxford applicants is that they will now need to pay a fee for their admissions test, while the previous in-house tests were all free to take. However, this wasn't particularly unexpected, as many of the top universities in the UK have moved to UAT UK ever since its creation in 2023. For the most part, the UK now has one singular set of admissions tests for these broad subjects that can be used by any university that wishes to refine their admissions process. These tests may be adopted by more and more universities in the coming years, especially those inside the Russell Group. Back to Oxford, for the most part, these old tests have been replaced with UAT UK equivalents, like the PAT being replaced by the ESAT. However, there are 13 courses at Oxford that are actually losing their admissions tests. Of the 8 tests being removed, only 4 have had a clear replacement. The Classics Admissions Test, Modern Languages Admissions Test, Ancient History and Classical Archaeology Admissions Test, and Philosophy Admissions Test are all very subject specific and can't easily be replaced by any of the current UAT UK tests. Instead of adding the TARA to these courses as the generic test, none of these courses currently have an admissions test listed as a requirement. Some do still require written work, but courses like Philosophy and Modern Languages currently have no admissions requirement beyond the standard UCAS application and interviews. This isn't unusual for Oxford degrees, as plenty of other courses don't have any additional requirements, but we currently don't know if these requirements are final. Realistically, there are 3 options here. New admissions tests could be announced, though this is pretty unlikely for 2026. A new written work requirement may be announced for the courses that don't have one, which is a bit more likely, or they may just do nothing, making the admissions processes for these courses significantly easier. These are already some of the least competitive courses at the uni anyway, so it'll be interesting to see how the admissions process plays out in 2026. There's also a strange outlier in this list of courses that lost their admissions tests. Material Science previously used the Physics Admissions Test, but it's not currently confirmed to be using its replacement, the ESAT. The list that Oxford published appears to be final, so it seems unlikely that the course will be using an admissions test. This may change in the future, but this appears to be the case for now. In another one-off case, there was also one course that gained an admissions test after not having one the year prior. This is History and Politics, which did previously use the History admissions test along with the other history degrees at Oxford, but that was removed in 2025. The only other history degree that currently uses an admissions test is History and Economics, which still used the TSA in 2025 due to its economics portion. So that covers all the current changes that have been made to Oxford's admissions tests as of 2026. However, that may not be everything that changes. There are a handful of courses that could still use the new UAT UK tests in the future, even if not in 2026. Firstly, looking at the rest of the history degrees, could they adopt the TARA in their admissions processes? Well, the HAT was a very subject-specific admissions test, much like the CAT and MLAT. The politics and economics variants use it because of their connections to other degrees that do use the TARA. The general history degree and variants like art or modern languages may not benefit as much from using the TARA because the test is just so broad. Critical thinking, problem solving, and writing skills are all required for the courses, but you could say the same for the majority of courses at the university. The results for these tests likely wouldn't tell the admissions tutors much about whether the applicants would specifically thrive in a history degree, so written work is the far more sensible option for those degrees. But a pair of courses that do have a highly relevant admissions test available are chemistry and biology. Even prior to 2026, physics was the only one of these core sciences that required an admissions test. The other two didn't have any additional requirements, but this is because there wasn't a relevant test available at the time. However, the ESAT covers all of these core sciences, as well as mathematics, so this would now be the perfect admissions test to go with these courses. In 2026, neither of them are currently confirmed to be using the test, and it still lists no admissions requirements on their course pages. This may change down the line, but for now, we can only wonder why this test wasn't added. As well as these, biochemistry, earth sciences, and geography may all benefit from the ESAT, though perhaps not to the same degree as chemistry or biology. But beyond these courses, the spread of admissions tests at Oxford is now a lot simpler, while still making sense for the majority of courses that have them. The last thing to consider is how this will impact your application. In short, not a lot. These changes were announced very early on in the admission cycle for 2027 entry, which means very few applicants will have started preparing for the October admissions tests yet. The only significant thing you will need to do now is ensure you prepare for the right test. The only options currently at Oxford are the UCAT, LNET, ESAT, TMUA, and TARA, so these are the tests you should be preparing for. A lot of the old tests have years of past papers available, but these could actually still be a valuable resource. They won't be helpful for practicing your exam technique or completing mocks, but they do provide a massive selection of practice questions that you can use for more casual study sessions. The key is to be aware of what makes these questions different compared to the current tests, and do these questions as a way to sharpen your subject knowledge rather than your exam technique. The TSA papers are especially good for TARA practice, as the format and the question styles are very similar to one another, though not identical. At the end of the day, the official mock tests and questions for the current test should be your primary preparation resource, but these older questions can help bolster your collection. That's everything you need to know about this change for now. Remember to give yourself plenty of time to prepare and ensure you know which tests all of your university options use. Good luck with your preparation, and subscribe to learn more about these tests.